Census organizers have been worried about a possible undercount in Latino communities for years. Those worries intensified when the Trump administration announced that in-person counting in San Diego will end September 18th, weeks before it was supposed to. The census determines how much money and how much political representation these communities will have for a decade. Organizers like Paola Araceli Ilescas say a Latino getting counted in 2020 can bring about even more change than casting a single vote. For instance, this year's CARES Act, the pandemic relief funding bill, was allocated based in part on the 2010 census.
I know we talk about time. We tell them, you count yourself this year, you're making sure you count for the next 10 years. You don't count yourself this year, you basically are not receiving or don't exist for these next 10 years. And guess what? We're gonna lose $2,000 each year for each person that doesn't count for the next 10 years.
Ilescas works for the Vista Community Clinic. She organizes agricultural workers from Mexico and Central America who work the avocado orchards. Most of these workers can't vote. Their children, many of whom are U.S. citizens, are still too young to vote. So to participate politically, Ilescas wants them to get counted. But that's not always easy, especially when it comes to undocumented and mixed status families.
Many of them still have said that other people have expressed distrust. Are they really the employees, or are they faking to be the employees in order to get them? Because for years we've been saying, don't open the door to ICE officials. This is your right? And so at this point, now we're saying, open the door.
That transition takes trust between census organizers and the community. But other issues like wildfires and pandemic relief are taking priority. On a recent sweltering day in San Marcos, wildfires threatened rural communities across the state. Arcela Nunez Alvarez, a community organizer, planned on leading a group of volunteers to pass out census literature outside of a low-income housing development. But the volunteers were redirected. A wildfire had just broken out nearby.
We work with a lot of adults. Many have very limited formal education. They've had to work their entire lives, but care about their community.
Nunez Alvarez grew up in San Marcos. She understands the importance of messaging coming from members of the community.
These leaders then, live in apartment complexes like the ones here around us. So they're members of the community. They speak the language of the community. They look like the community that we're trying to reach.
She says that while many community members can't vote, that doesn't mean they don't have a role to play in getting resources to their community.
These are communities that have been politically disengaged or disenfranchised and undercounted, in the census.
In the Imperial Valley, which has been hit hard by the pandemic, census efforts often have to take a back seat to safety. But the stakes couldn't be higher. The low-income agricultural powerhouse needs federal money for cleaner air, broadband access, better health care, and transportation in an area that's frequently cut off from the rest of the region.
The commitment that we make to our community.
Miguel Hernandez is an organizer with Comité Cívico del Valle, which is helping spearhead census efforts in the Imperial Valley. He said that going virtual is not always an option for census organizing.
Having also low broadband connectivity throughout the county makes it even more difficult if you wanted to promote digital, if you wanted to promote using social media platforms.
He's worried that not having that face-to-face interaction during the pandemic has set them back.
Having a direct conversation and, probably sharing a coffee or, unas conchitas, pan dulce or something like that with their neighbors. That's the way our community wants to be approached. That's the way our community feels confident to the information you're giving them actually makes sense to them.
Time is running out for Latino communities, undocumented immigrants and citizens who have just a few more days to make themselves count, and a decade to live through the results. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.